Here's the Buzz. It's your guest host, Dante Ramos, and I have Taveeta Szymanowicz from Netflix's Dare Me. And let me tell you, I loved her character, Riis. So we're going to get right into it. So Taveeta, Riis, Addie, and Beth literally remind me of Mean Girls Plastics, with Regina George being Beth herself. What do you think made your character, Riis, follow Beth so much throughout the entire series?
I mean, that's actually such an interesting comparison. No one's actually brought up the whole like Mean Girls dynamic. But I think essentially like any power dynamic that you would find in high school, or rather for someone who's just trying to find herself, find her place in high school, you idolize the queen bee, right? You want to be like the queen bee. And so for Riis, being in a position where being on a cheer squad in a small town in America already comes with this sense of empowerment. Trying to be best friends with the queen bee of said squad is like, I guess, the ultimate goal in her eyes. And she also struggles a bit with, I think, a bit of insecurity on her part, because her mother, my mother, played by Tamala Perry in the show, is quite hard on her. She puts a lot of pressure on Riis to be top girl, be the best, because JJ Curtis was top girl and JJ Curtis was the best during her time in high school. So I think that also has a lot to do with the reason why she idolizes Beth and really follows Beth and Addie around almost like a little puppy, because she's trying to be like one of them and she's trying to prove to herself that she can be like one of them.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that she has insecurities, because for me, I look at Riis and I'm like, she's so carefree, she's so confident, body positive. So to hear that from you playing the character, that's such a like interesting insight. And I was gonna ask you, what is your favorite characteristic or traits about your character, Riis?
Well, okay, so it's interesting. I do think she is insecure, but I would say that her vibrancy and her sense of self in that terms is something that I do love about the character. So I think it's like a mixed bag with Riis, because I do agree with you. I think that she knows who she is. She just is insecure about how she's going to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think especially in our show with the character dynamics and with the power dynamics, it's so important to have a character like her that brings a bit of the lightness to the show and brings the vibrancy to the show. And I love that you do use the word body positive. I remember, I think it's the pilot specifically, one of my favorite lines that she had is like, my mom told me I should be proud of my body. And I read that and I was like, damn straight. And especially when you are a cheerleader in a small town in America, I think there's a lot of pressure to look a certain way, be a certain way. So to kind of instill that self-positive confidence within herself is something I really admire about the character. And much like any young woman, I think out there, I think that's what we're trying to do. I think we're trying to find ourselves, and that comes with the ups and downs, right? So that comes with the feeling great and feeling empowered and understanding what it really means to step into your power. And then it comes with questioning yourself and questioning your decisions, because you're growing up and no one tells you how to do things, right? You have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I feel like the entire series is about making the wrong or right choices. So for me, I would have to ask you, do you think that a dream is so worth chasing that you would risk it all?
I think if you believe it in your, I think if you're so passionate about it in your core,
Mhm.
that why wouldn't you risk it all and go after everything that you want? I think in the constraints of this story, though, it's a bit risky to say that, because it is quite dark and it's quite psychological, right? You have this power dynamic between a group of girls. A new coach comes in. She starts really shaking things up in this power dynamic, and that leads to unhealthy choices and unhealthy realizations on how to solve the problem that leads the characters down a bit of like a dark psychological path. So I think in that sense, there should definitely be some sense of morality, and you have to be able to take a step back when you are following your dreams. You have to be able to take a step back and make sure that you're doing them in the best way. Make sure that you're being the best person that you can be while also striving for your goals. And I think if you're doing that, you're being the best person that you can be while also like taking all the risks, jumping and flying into the air for what you want, then that's what you should be doing.
Yes, a strong response. I really like that one. Would you consider yourself a leader? And I don't want to say follower, I would say more of like okay with being the passenger, okay with someone else driving. Which one would you say Taveeta is?
Um, I think I mean, I'd like to say that I'm a leader in a sense of like I like to promote that in other people. I want to make sure that if people want to do something, or if they have a goal, if they have a dream, or they have a vision, that they try their best to bring it to life. But I think in life, like life is such a big ride and wave that you have to know when to step forward and when to step back. And I think a big self personal goal for myself is just like letting go of control in that sense. So when I find myself in moments in life where things are absolutely out of my control, I'm just going to sit back in the passenger seat and enjoy the ride, like take in everything that I'm seeing, really enjoy that experience so that I can use that experience, bank that experience within myself in the long run. You know, and then there's sometimes where you see something and you're like, I got to get in the passenger, I got to get in the driver's side right here. We're going to steer clear away from this and we're going to beeline for what we're going towards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think we definitely have to know when to play a certain role. And Riri played a significant role to me, in my opinion, within the murder case. It was like I wanted to just tell her, like, shh, like, oh my gosh, oh my bracelet done flew off. I was getting so excited. I was just like, oh my God, please, Riri, please, just don't say anymore. Do you think that Riri realized how much of a role she was playing within the whole entire case?
I think she knows she's a pawn in Beth and Addie's relationship. I think she's always known that from just like the power dynamic sense. But I think when this murder happens and as the mystery unfolds, she just wants, she needs to, I need, like Riri needs to figure out what's going on. And her relationship with Tibbs, I think, kind of crosses over into the information that she shares with Beth and Addie.
Mhm.
And it was always a funny conversation to be had with our creator, Megan Abbott, because you know, there were some days where she would kind of beeline towards like, you know about this? And then there were some days where she's like, you don't know about this. So from a character perspective, it was really fun for me to make those choices and be like, how much do I know? How much does this woman know? And I think that that's an interesting choice for the audience as well, because that's what makes a good mystery. Who knows what and why, right?
Yes.
So I think from the perspective of the grand scheme of the actual plot, she knows she's a pawn in the relationship. I think where we left off in the story, who knows how much she actually knew? Who
The
knows?
ending. Oh my gosh. I can't wait for people to see this interview because they need to watch this show. The turn of events, girl, completely. Speaking of turn of events, did you ever do anything like Riri in your life, Tavita, as wild or as like, oh my gosh, my mom would die if she knew? Whatever you're comfortable sharing, did you ever have moments like that? Or were you more of the good girl?
I think, you know, I think like anyone in high school, everything's so hyper emotional that sometimes the things that we think were like the biggest deals were actually nothing in the grand scheme of things. And then like, you know, 7, 8 years later, you look back and you're like, oh, that actually wasn't as crazy as I thought would have been. I think I had a couple of moments like that just in terms of like my own insecurity growing up as a girl. But like in terms of wild nature now, I think I'd like to toot my own horn because I have jumped out of a plane.
Ooh.
And my mom, like on the whole ride there, I was like, I'm not going to call my mom. I'm not going to tell her because she's probably going to kill me. So I'm just going to wait until after. And then when after I like landed the ground and like kissed the floor, I was like, so I just jumped out of a plane. And she was like, what? So I
Freaking
think that
out,
was
right?
like
That'd be
the
my mom.
wildest thing. Yeah. But that was only like a year ago. So here's still little me just being like, this is really wild. Am I going to tell my mom or not? Right. But there's also something really lovely about being in your 20s and being in the age where like you're stepping into your power and where you've learned your lessons of the past and now you're applying that to the present and to the decisions you're making that are hopefully facilitating your future. And I think that I have had a good mix of mistakes that have made me who I am now and that I are helping me grow into the woman I hope to be, you know?
Yes, for sure. And you brought up the word mistake, and all I could think about was this grand mistake or accident, freak show that happened to your character. I don't want to give away too much, but that's like my worst fear. something that happened to your character. Have you ever had a freak accident like that?
So me too. When I when I first got the script, obviously I don't want to give away what the freak accident is, but when I first got the script, like from like the actor inside of me was like, oh my God, this is so juicy, this is gonna be amazing. And it was so much fun. But now, because all my friends like, holy crap, that scene, and everyone loves to talk about that scene and brings it up, and I've seen it quite a lot, that it's really disturbing. Like, I wish that upon no one. Like, any type of freak accident that would do that, absolutely, like, wish that upon no one. And I grew up a dancer, so I mean, I was always kind of in a bit of like an athletic jeopardy in terms of like, I could potentially pull a muscle or like break a leg if something went wrong. But that never happened to me. I was really fortunate to never experience something on an extreme scale like that, because I think that is genuinely traumatic. Like, that is something that Riri will take with her for the rest of her life, and that she'll probably have to work through for a bit, which was so great also from a character perspective moving forward as the series progressed. Like, I think you see a bit of a shift in her. Like, she is definitely more vibrant in the first half of the season versus the back half. There's she's always going to be that fun and exciting, bubbly girl, but there is, I think, a layer of consciousness behind her that is a bit disturbing as a result of what happens. So wish it upon no one. It's never happened to me, and I hope it never does.
Yeah, me either, girl. Let's pray.
Yeah.
So speaking of your athleticism, you were doing some pretty like cool stunts within this show. So I'm glad that you said you were a dancer. What was like that training like for you? The diet process or anything that you had to do to be a cheerleader for this role?
Yeah, I tell everybody so we had cheer camp. Before we started shooting. We had 2.5 weeks of cheer camp, both for the pilot and then when we went to series. And I remember on the pilot walking into cheer camp being like, this is going to be a breeze. I've got this. I have like literally like 14 years of dance experience under my belt. And girl, I got my kicked out of me. On the first day, I was like, this is so hard, because it's just a whole other level of athleticism and a whole other just like group of muscles that you're using, and also just like intentions you're committing to, because by being a cheerleader, you are agreeing and you are taking on the responsibility to host someone up in the air or to catch them when they're flying down, right? Which, that's a massive responsibility. So cheer camp was intense. I'm so glad that we did it, because it really kind of instilled, I guess, that like vigor that we all needed, that grit that we all needed when we stepped onto set to do these scenes, because we were actually doing everything. Like, outside of a couple of major stunts that like Marlo and Horizon had to do, and also Allison Thornton, who plays Tacy, everything else was not done on wires. Like, the most of the squad is actually cheerleaders, so it was intense and it was a lot, but it was such a gratifying experience, and I think that it really carried over onto the screen, because it's gnarly,
I would have
and
never thought there was wires. So to hear that, I'm like, what? It was like complete guys, pyramids, stunts, flipping, all of that.
Yeah, and I think it's so great too, because I think there's this really big misconception just about how cheerleading was portrayed early on in the media, about just girls with pom-poms and glitter and woohoo and just cheering around, versus like the actual athleticism of the sport. It's intense, and it deserves to be respected as something that intense. So I'm really glad that portrayed onto the screen, and that I got to have that experience, because it also gave me a newfound respect for the sport. And I will not say and call myself a cheerleader, because I don't think that I can do nearly as much as like the rest of our squad was able to do, but it was a great experience.
I'm happy to actually hear you say that, because my little sister is she was definitely one of the hosts, the stands,
the base
throughout all of her high school experience, to see her blood, sweat, and tears. So I love shows like that, because it's true. People do not take cheerleaders seriously at all, and they should. And my last question for you is, are you team Beth or are you team Addie?
Why'd you got to do this to me? This is such a hard question. It's I think in terms of just like who's going through more emotionally and trying to be towards that, I'm Team Beth. Because I think what's so beautiful about the way Marlo Kelly has portrayed this character is showing that why she does what she does, and it's solely coming from a place of hurt. And I think that as a human being, it's important to be able to recognize that in someone else, and hopefully have the empathy to then forgive them for their decisions. And I'd like to whip some sense into Addie. I'd like to whip some sense into her, just to be like, do not let this woman walk all over you.
Thank you.
That's a lesson you have to learn on your own, right? So I understand where she's coming from as well, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm Team Beth. Sorry, Horizon.
I love all of your answers. Thank you so much for your time, Taveeta.
Thank you for having me, Dante.
I loved Riri, and I really hope season 2 is here, because I can't wait to see what your character does in the next season.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Where is the buzz?
Oh, yeah.
Where is the buzz? You said
We used to be
was
ashamed,
mine.
bro.